If a place has been sacred for thousands of years, with rituals, ceremonies, all around the year at these both equinoxes and the solstices and the other important dates in the yearly wheel, and if these rituals and ceremonies have been performed by our mutual ancestors for thousands of years, and I'm talking about everyone who has some kind of connection to the Germanic tribes and the Scandinavians, Northern Europeans, the Anglo-Saxons, Franks and Alemanni and Rus and so forth. Can we go to these places today and reconnect, use them as portals to connect to something greater than ourselves? The divinity, as they called it in the Vikings called it, but in Norse mythology, to cross that Bifrost bridge and get a touch of divinity from the ancient gods. Reconnect, so to say. Well, we've tried that out. Meaning, we're trying to find these sacred places. That's number one. Where do we find them? Well, first off, on top of churches. Or preferably if churches have been moved in more recent times. We can go to these places and we can see. In Norway, we've had Christianity for about 1,000 years, and we can see where all these ancient churches that we have, the wooden church buildings and some stone that are 800, 900 years old even, and we can try to see if that place has been sacred or holy, a place of worship in earlier times, going really far back. You see, we have a source, I think it's Pope Justinian in the 6th century, where the question is, what do we do with the old pagan worship places, like with the Germanic tribes? It is written that he said, well, we put the churches on top of their old places of worship, like the Irmunsul, the tree they took down from the Saxons, for example. Or in Norway and Scandinavia, we have several instances like that. And what we do, and I'll show you now on a map and a few photos in one example. First we check the topography, meaning the it's a difficult name in English. We check the place names, if there are any sacred place names, which means in southern Norway and in middle Sweden, if there are any of the old Vanir names from the Vanir gods, not the Asir gods, but the Vanir, which means Frøy, or Frøya as some say, no, sorry, Frøya and Frøy, the brother, and Njord, their father, which was coincidentally the fertility goddess Nerthus in the Bronze Age. There was a switch there in the early Iron Age. And Ull. Ull is a very common name. Ullern, Ullevi, Ullens, Vang, all the way from Stockholm in the east of Scandinavia, as a belt across to Bergen and Stavanger in the west of Norway, and other places also. So we know these places of worship, and that's an indication, a very strong indication, that it goes really far back in time. Then number two, we take the different sun paths, solar lines at the solstices and equinoxes, if it's the Vanir gods. The Asir seem to have been more concerned with this year, 21st of December, the winter solstice, and the 21st of June, the summer solstice this year. And it's the same angle, and I'll show you on the map. It's the same angle when it comes to where the sun sets on summer solstice and where the sun rises on winter solstice. This leads us to the third. We can then look at burial mounds from both a mound but also stones. We have many of them also. We call them røyser. And these burial mounds if they are placed along the sun path, because that was the whole point. You had these burial mounds where people would pass either by ship or roads, paths that they would travel, but also on these sun paths where the sun would hit from this place of worship. You would have a chieftain's place, like this specific place I'm going to show you now, just outside the city of Ålesund, where my family is from. There's an archaeologist there who's doing excavations with a big team. It's very exciting. They found a chieftain's hall, and then there's a procession. This was important. We know this from almost 2,000 years ago. They would go with a procession from the chieftain's hall to the hov, which is one of these place names, the place of worship. They would have their ceremonies there at specific times, and this was also a calendar. They would see when the sun would return in January, late January or February, because it's far in the north, right? It's darkness. So we even have this, we call it Troja Borg, meaning Troja fortress, but it's not fortress. Up at 900 meters, as you may see here, if I'm able to paste this in. There are stone labyrinths at 900 meters above sea level. And the theory is, you see the sun, when it returns, it fits perfectly on the angle to this island called the God Island. Even today it's called Godøy, God Island. And we checked this out on the 21st of June this year. The archaeologist who lives just by there would check out. And the whole key point then to see, now that we have the ancient place of worship, we have the topographic place names and the sacred names, I mean, and then we have the burial mounds like dots on the line, and then we check, because we have to go and test it at this, and it's not exactly the same, because cosmos has changed a little bit in 2,500 years. It changes a bit, right? And the key thing that we look for is when the sun, before it sets, it disappears, so it sets like normal, but then it reappears for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and goes then into a holy place, like a sacred grove, which in Scandinavian language is called lund. So lund is another place name that we're looking for, or something with God or holy. Helgastein, Helgøy, or Godøy, or Lund, in various combinations. We got so many of them. And that's a key point when trying to find these ancient portals. And look at this. When we see the sun disappearing and then suddenly reappearing, and this goes on for like a week, and it's the middle 21st of June when this we see it the best, and it reappears, as you can see, and then it sets into this island called God Island, which is the sacred island. And that's how we can find these places. There is a fourth, and that is where we have rock carvings, which we have many of, and many of these places with rock carvings are depictions of hunting, the hunting lifestyle and gathering, much up in the mountains and along the coast. But some places, like close to where I live, there are not hunt, but there are vulva, phallos, fertility rites, meaning, and really strange and eerie medicine men, or shamans, I would say. And those places are really old, and for the past, I guess, 3,000 years, they have been largely forgotten. And to go to those places and just be there, that's amazing. And maybe I'll add a fifth if you got time with me. A fifth is about the liminal space that they were so preoccupied with in terms of worship, which is, well, a liminal space is neither here nor there. It's a place that is a little bit scary, but at the same time very tempting. So you see it in games with Slender Man and Little Nightmares. I know my son plays this, and they use very much this because it's very, make something bubble, I guess, inside of us in a fearful but exciting way. And even, I think, Severance, the TV series, they use this with corridors and empty corridors, neither here nor there. In the Viking Age, it was, before Christianity that is, it was in the borderline between sea and land. So we have to raise the sea level to try to understand how it was. And we have a church outside of Trondheim, Værnes Church. When we raise the sea level, we see that that is one of those places. We also have a place south of Bergen called Tysnes, where the sun disappears and then reappears and shines only on the bauta, the stone that's put there, and the burial mound on Tysnes, which is from the god Tyr, which is why we have Tuesday. And just like March, the Romans had March, right? And the month of March, but also the day. Tyr and March were the gods of justice. And that means also they kept order in the chaos. That was their main purpose, and that's why we still use Tuesday today. So that's also a way to find divinity and sacredness in nature. But of course, all these peoples like in my area, in Scandinavia, Northern Europe, especially the Germanic tribes and the Celts, they viewed nature in a pantheistic way. Everything was one and all is one. Oh, how do you say this? All is one and one is all. That is this. It's the same as we find in the ancient roots in India even, but that's why we have something called Indo-European. There are some common roots back which have roots that are more than 4,000 years old. So that's why it's been developed in a different path called the Brahman, Atman, down in India and in that area in the Vedic times. But here also, like the Stoics, they would have logos, like it says in the Bible. In the beginning was the Word. But that's not what it says. Did you know that? It doesn't say in the beginning. It doesn't have anything to do with time, like I thought when I was young. The word is arche, like archetype, which means the first principle. And it's not word, it's logos. And logos, the understanding of logos 2,000 years ago, was the cosmic principle of divinity in everything, pantheism. Just like the ancient ones believed in, just like the Stoics believed in, everything is sacred. Nature is sacred, we are sacred. Our breath, which still today in German is close to Atman, Atem, I think it is. And this is the same as the philosopher Arne Næss in Norway talked about when he talked about nature. And we find this among many philosophers when they refuse to make God into some individual. He can affect your individual lives in a way. Instead, they would praise all is one, one is all, as we have done for thousands of years. So in order to reconnect, or maybe even reactivate these places, maybe we can do it all over, but I think it helps to go to these places where there have been rituals for thousands of years and try to seek this, not liminal space because it's there, but a liminal state. And then we should be able to reconnect. Maybe adding a little bit of what the ancient used, our ancestors used in their rituals. That probably would help. Hope you like this.